buddy, Endgame, Dominic and I. We've been out of the game for about 9 months, due to life circumstance and transition in new jobs, transition of new homes. But me and Dominic have been trying to get this on the books for the longest, and we were finally able to knock it out. We were almost close last week, but I had to text my boy with my kids and my wife want to see Boss Baby too, so I had to divert the mission and take my kids and my wife to see. Yeah, I had to see Boss Baby, which was a good movie. I thought it was entertaining. There's some grooming in there, if you will, influencing from Hollywood. But anytime you step foot on any platform of any movie or any major media platform, you're going to have an agenda, a corporate agenda. But we already know that. But hey, welcome, brother, and I open it up to you, man.
Yeah, man. It's been a minute, and but we communicate regularly, and what's going on with current events and what's going on with our country. And I know we have less than an hour booked here that we scheduled for, so I just want to go right into it, man. I really believe today that the great state of Texas started the official second Civil War, and that move was, and Governor Abbott had broke this down back in April, and he said, "Hey, we're going to start building facilities and we're going to start apprehending illegal immigrants." This was back in April, and it started on Wednesday. So they're expecting thousands and hundreds of thousands of detainees that are here illegally, according to Texas, and according, obviously, to my belief as well. But that, I believe, is the official shot fired for the second Civil War. And I'm going to tell you and this is just a few things that are going to take place. You're going to start seeing sanctuary states take Texas to the highest court for this, because they're going to break out. This is a racist move, because we don't know in detail yet. It'll come out, but we don't know in detail where Texas law enforcement officials can apprehend these people. Is it at a residence? Is it at a supermarket? Is it at church? There's levels to the game here. But in my belief, I think it's going to be open game, open season on anywhere they're at. They get pulled over. And I can see how some people feel like that's discrimination. Like, you're pulling me over because you think I may drive an illegal alien vehicle, or I made, you know what I'm saying? There's so much stuff that can come to this, bro. And that the Dems can play this hand. So you're going to start seeing where Texas is sued, bro. I mean, we're seeing where Biden is sued, right? By these conservative states, if you want to call them that, But you're going to start seeing sanctuary states sue Texas. And this is going to get heated, bro. Like, this is a racist thing. Like, why are you pulling over Latinos? Like, even though Latinos make up almost half the state of Texas. So where does this go? Like, you could be pulled over, bro. I don't live in Texas no more. You could be pulled over. Where are we going with this, bro? Obviously, you can be able to, you don't have you can pull out your DOD card. You can flash. Yeah, exactly, bro. You're as American as it gets. But you get what I'm saying? This is like the shot right here, bro. This is it. This is the line that's drawn in the sand. What other state's going to do this? Arizona did it for a minute, but not to this level. Not to this level.
They got crushed, and they're probably better off from a legal standpoint as if they have eyes on target with a National Guard, and they have eyes on target them coming over the border. And once they have eyes and they have empirical data and proof that they crossed the border, for then Texas law enforcement to apprehend them. So then the next game will be from a legal place. So how do you know they're just not returning through the middle of the Rio Grande Valley, which we know that's fictitious. However, in a legal argument, the law and what's right, allegedly they're aligned, but we know there's gray areas, right? So I think what you're going to see in the short term, though, is if Governor Abbott's able to execute this, you're going to see then a mass migration into Arizona, into California. Arizona, there's some Senate implication there with that one senator. She's being very, very low key, moderate Democrat. She's not going too far to the left because she's vulnerable. But if that's the case, if Texas is able to manage that, at least put some resistance, or to use a Democrat word, hesitancy, like they used to use for the vaccine. If you put some illegal migration hesitancy into Texas, then that shifts it to Arizona. Arizona's kind of like the moderate of the three states. And then for California, hey, you know what? They're getting exactly what they want. So I don't even think they'll have an issue with it. Like, as a matter of fact, I would not put it across Governor Abbott's lips to say, we'll welcome anybody here because we're not aligned with the racist values of Texas. I could hear that as being a great talking point, because they've lost, there's lost congressional seats because of exodus of California. There's increased congressional seats if you're able to get them on the rolls, which is huge. Why they want DACA to be instituted in a pathway for citizenship, because once those become American citizens legitimately, it opens up opportunities to influence the electorate. And that's really what this is about, right? If this was a true country value, then Biden would welcome everybody trying to get out from Cuba, but they don't. And why don't they? Because Cuba, one, if they come here, they're probably going to vote conservatively. So that's going to work against them in the congressional districts in Florida, and it's going to work against them in a national election, because as that population grows, they generally like to stay in Florida because of the weather and the culture. It's very akin to them, as they made that, as they fled Castro's Cuba years ago. But then on the other side of that, they'll say, well, the reason Republicans don't want anybody coming in from California is because they're literally going to vote Democrat. So they're both at fault. There's nobody with a true value system. It's basically what policy gives an advantage to my electorate and my party, because we know now it's all about party. It's not even about being right. If you look at all the COVID shutdowns, and we never got to touch on that too much, we know that governors' policies and state local officials' policies, they don't align with their personal behavior on either side, right? Ted Cruz was like, we need to work for the American people. That dude's on his way to Puerto Vallarta with his daughters. And then they call him out and he's like, oh, I had a blowout bag. I was just going to drop them off in Mexico and return. Like, if you're willing to send your kids to Mexico alone, you might as well let them fly there alone. Like, what are you doing when you get them to the hotel? Like, that's when the party, and that's when the danger just begins. It isn't on the flight to Mexico that there's a threat. And then you have Whitmire in Michigan. You have Gavin Newsom going to the French Laundry. You have the mayor of San Francisco going to the French Laundry. You have, the mayor of Austin doing the same thing. Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservative, doesn't matter. It's easy to make rules you don't have to follow. I mean, and we saw that our entire military career. We saw people put out rules and regulations, and then we saw what they did on liberty, which did not align with the rules and regulations, right? So, it is what it is. It is what it is.
And what's funny is, like, the Democratic Party, like, and this just tells you the attention span of 90% of Americans. The Democrat Party is like the face of illegal immigration. Man, you've been watching the news for 5 minutes. Let me tell you if you believe that. The Republican Party in the modern era, bro, the Republican Party is truly the amnesty master, bro. All the way to Reagan. Reagan dropped amnesty. He was big on amnesty, bro. George H. Bush was big on illegal immigration. Second, Bush number 2, before he left, the last 2 years of his tenure, which was he did 2 terms, he was pushing for amnesty for all illegal immigrants, bro. This is before DACA, bro. This is before Barack brought up DACA. If Bush too would have had his way, there'd be no DACA, bro. There'd be no DACA. He would have gave everybody the amnesty. But who denied him the amnesty before he left? The Democrat Party. Shocker. The shocker. No, it's not a shocker, bro. It's just both parties have been playing the illegal immigration game for their own personal gain. And that's just a fact. It's just that Republicans are upset that the Democrats have, in a sense, checkmated them on this, bro. You've been checkmate. Now they have Biden, and it's just a free fall, bro, for what's going on. Because obviously what Trump was doing, and the GOP is upset about it, and I understand that. But bro, you helped create. You were the master of this. You were dropping amnesty, dude. You dropped amnesty in the 80s, and you were dropping amnesty in the beginning of this century with George W. Bro, come on, man. To put this on just one party, you don't know your history. You don't know your American history at all. You don't.
Fix this, but they don't want to fix it for a multitude of reasons. One, it's a great wedge issue. It's a great say, if you don't want people to come in unchecked into our country, then you hate the essence of our creation. No, because when people came in mass immigration, they were processed through this country. Especially
World War II, FDR.
Yeah, the Europeans, they were processed. They just didn't come. And even when the mass exodus over Fidel's regime, when the most affluent Cubans were able to come here, the ones that had businesses, companies, wealth, the ability to get a plane, charter a plane, get out of Cuba when they realized what was going to happen, there was a process as well. If you go down to southern Florida and you ask them what their political views are, you will see probably there's a generational gap, obviously, because there's a generational gap in every sense of culture, right? A conservative of 1950 is much different than a conservative of 1990, 40 years later. And then a conservative of 2030 will look much, much different than a conservative of 1990. We don't know what that looks like. Conservative now is really what? It's not even really conservative. It's almost just, at this point, bare bones, 75% constitutional. That's what a conservative is. They're not financially conservative anymore, because under Trump, they ran deficit numbers unheard of, but every president does that. So they're not financially conservative. They're not socially.
Every president. We had a surplus. A certain president from a certain party had a surplus at one time in the modern era.
And Clinton, who had a surplus, and we did really, really well. And then Bush did a great job of spending all that money on that whack war, and in Iraq. And however, there's always this balance, right? I've observed in my time, I'm 51 years old, that if we have a strong foreign policy, generally our domestic policy is trash and horrible. And I'll tell you, in my opinion, why is because the foreign policy generally aligns with the military-industrial complex. And Republicans are quick to go to war. They're quick for government contracts with Halliburton, with Boeing, with everybody in the free world. But they're not real quick on the VA benefits, though, dog. They're not real quick on funding the VA the way when they want to say this. So then, if I invert that process, the Democrats are huge on funding the VA. However, they aren't really big on rules of engagement that enable more people to come back alive. So they have to use less veterans benefits. So there's this ebb and flow, right? So Bill Clinton's foreign policy was really trash, right? He saw a bunch of dead bodies in Somalia and he got scared. Now, to his defense, and I'm not a big Clinton defender by any stretch. However, I'm a defender of America. It is very hard. It is very hard to have to bury Americans and watch Americans die and have to come back and face their family, your friends that knew them. So as a president, if you're truly living out being a true American patriot, that has to be painful to be the commander in chief and watch that. However, we know, and we've heard this multiple times, and it's not popular, but we know in a kinetic environment, the safest place for your Marines and sailors is outside the wire fighting. That is the safest place for them. Keeping them behind the wire, hoping stuff doesn't fall out of the sky and kill you, is a very bad recipe. And when you stay on the defense and you're not able to be aggressive and don't have the resources you need, it becomes very, very challenging, and it turns into a Benghazi situation where you don't yield the credibility of the threat that's outside the wire. And it is what it is. We had horrible foreign policy under Clinton, but we had phenomenal domestic policy that we saw a lot of people thriving. We had a surplus. BRAC happened. So what you did see was an inversion of the military industrial complex starting to have less impact, but then you saw greater goods for the people within the continental United States and also Hawaii and other territories as well. Absolutely.
And I will give credit to what credit's due. He kind of, the Clinton era was able to ride the wave of the Iron Curtain falling. So that the attention of having to compete with the Soviet Union was over. So, spending those resources to defeat the Soviet Union, which Reagan was able to do, benefited obviously the country, and Clinton was able to ride the wave off that. I can't deny that. And he played it great when it came to the domestic policy. But this whole thing with the Republican Democrat thing, man, it's just really, bro. And you just said it. You said it. They're actors, bro. They're all actors. And at this moment in time, the country is in a big flux regarding where we're going to go. We can admit that the left has I'm not going to say the majority in majority, but they have the big guns. They have big tech. They obviously have the White House. They're half on the Senate, and they own the House. And not only that, they have a lot of real estate, bro. And what I mean by that is they have higher education campuses, and they have much of the public school system, bro. So we're in this bide, and I could see where Abbott is trying to hold the line. Because the truth of the fact is Texas is probably going to go blue here in 24, bro. Let's be real. Especially if these not citizens, I'm sorry, if these individuals who are crossing the border divert to East Texas. That's the only thing that's holding Texas from being blue is West Texas. Because the big cities, San Antonio, Dallas, H-Town, and A-Town, the capital, are Democrat through and through. And they're never giving that up, bro. I'm letting you know that right now. That's not going to happen, bro. And all that needs to happen is West Texas to fall blue. So this is just crazy. Now, as an American and U.S., we can agree that how both these parties have done it were very selfish for their own benefit, for their own gain. But what it's doing, bro, to the country, there's some positive out of it. There's quite a few positive out of it, right? People come here and they handle their business, and they procreate, they make businesses, they assimilate into our culture, But at the rate they're expecting over 1.2 million by the end of the year, bro. And if this goes on, you're talking about 4 million, possibly 5 million people into the country illegally, bro. That has a recipe for disaster, especially if you don't live in nice neighborhoods, bro. If you live in poor, bro, the crime rate is gonna just be horrendous, bro. This is a different kind of violence we're talking about, bro, because we're used to, as Americans, Americans don't understand this. I mean, they do. I'm sorry for that, but we're used to free market, right? Where you could run a business, be in a business, and not having to worry about people coming to bogart you and say, hey, pay me a tax. Like law enforcement coming over to your house saying, pay me a tax. Central America, in particular, Mexico and South America, they don't come from free markets, bro. They don't come from free markets. They're used to law enforcement, military, political figures coming to their property and saying, hey, where's my cut? So imagine that mindset migrating to America, bro. In urban populations where they're used to, bro, there will be no compromising, bro. There will be zero compromising. I mean, the crime that we're going to see within 10 years is going to be crazy. And if you don't get away from that in that urban communities, bro, it's not going to be good, bro. It's not going to be good for the country. It's not.
When you mention West Texas, I think that's why there's also a huge push, from the top, and the Green New Deal, which is more like the green weenie, right? Is they want to move away from gas and oil, because they know if they take away gas and oil and we go in the direction of electric cars and renewable energy, which we already have nuclear energy, and they don't want to use that because that doesn't fit the narrative and the agenda. However, if they are able to push people away from oil and gas, then that basically erodes the whole need for West Texas. The only reason anyone is in West Texas is because of oil and gas. Like, you would not choose to live in Midland, Texas, if you couldn't make $80 an hour working on those oil rigs. Like, you just wouldn't. So that automatically just decimates that. So then when you have minimal resources, then you have minimal activity, then you have minimal impact, and then you have even reduced influence in the electorate. It goes down to like these rural areas down south. We talked about that before. You go down to the rural areas and everyone's really nice. I didn't experience racism on any platform when I've been to Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee. And a lot of it comes down to limited resources. When there's only a few places that you can go to get things, people tend to be able to co-op and share that when they know it's limited. And when they remove, when you remove West Texas's ability to have any influence and that lobby leaves, but I don't think it is, though. I mean, I don't think oil and gas, I don't think it's going anywhere. I think they're going to make some things, law like they are in California, where the majority are going to have to be electric cars by 2030, 35. But then again, those are people making decisions that they don't got to live with, which is generally 99% of the politicians. It's easy to say defund the police because you don't live in an area that's riddled with crime. I can go back home and I have family friends that are in East LA. Tina has friends that are in lower socioeconomic areas in Southern Texas, and the crime is very high. And the first person that people call when things go bad is law enforcement, whether you like them or not. Every time a cop showed up to one of these areas and there's a bad outcome, whether it's deservingly or not deservingly, and it's not within the rules of engagement or not, I'm not going to argue those points, but someone within that own community called the police, right? Like an example, your boy Sherman that got into it. He was drunk and trying to bang the door down to his in-laws' house, come through. He's talking like he's a 19-year-old kid, right? This drunk at some frat party, pounding on the door, very violent. And that's a big dude. He's a strong guy. For the record, not as strong as Ronnie Lott. My assessment would have been Ronnie Lott would have probably knocked that door down. However, that's a conversation for another podcast in sports. But his wife called the police. Now, if I were to research her social media, what will I find about her opinion of police? It's like I've high octane opinion of law enforcement until they need them, and that's just the way it is. It's human nature. Someone had to call it. Hey, every time the cops show up to a shooting in Chicago, someone had to call them. Who called them?
Right.
The parents of the victim, the friends of the victim, and I wholeheartedly believe that the brunt of this, defund the police and all cops are, all the B word, whatever the case may be. I don't think the majority of the people in those areas actually believe that. I don't. I think that if you're Hispanic or African American and you live in these environments, you have to believe in that publicly because you got to live there, for one. And then that don't live there, that aren't impacted by not having police in their neighborhoods, like an area like where I live. If you're African American in my community, you could probably say that because it's not real to you. It's not real to you. Like, police, it's not real to you because you don't live in an area that's going to be affected by defunding the police. I live outside the city limits, so I have Bexar County sheriffs, and there's not a lot of crime here. There is crime, but if I were to call Bexar County sheriff, I'll probably have a sheriff here within 5 minutes, 100%. If you call the cops and SAPD within the city limits of San Antonio, you're probably not going to get a less than 5-minute response. So the people that really believe the defund the police model don't live with it, or they're making. I mean, you're in a great opportunity to speak to this. Minneapolis, the ground zero, the mecca of the defund the police effort because of George Floyd last year. What's happening now in Minneapolis, and how's law enforcement and crime looking in that area?
Bro, it's a debacle, to be honest with you, because they set a precedence during that time, and the crime rate is crazy, astronomical statistics, bro, in crime. And people of color, people of my color, people of black Americans, they're not for it, bro. They are asking for more police. But the precedents that the city made, the city council, by speaking these terms of defunding the police, bro, it backfired big time, bro. And they're suffering big time, man. That city, that area you're from Los Angeles. The 92 riots, bro. How long did it take for LA to recover from that, bro?
Not recovered 100%. They're not recovered. They're not recovered from that.
So, I mean, this is history repeats itself here, bro. The Twin Cities will never be the same, bro. Will never be the same for what occurred. Allowing a police precinct to be overran, bro. Come on, my guy. Wow, bro. The precedents that set, not only for the Twin Cities, but for the entire nation, bro. That was bad, bro. That was horrible, man. And like you said, people who are not living it don't have to worry about that, right, man? That's, they don't have skin in the game is what I like, the term I like to use. It's easy, like you said, to speak on it when you're not living it and when you don't have skin in the game. And in the Twin Cities, in regards to Minneapolis, that it'll never be the same, bro. I was talking to my neighbor, right? I live in rural America out here. Bro, he is well, majority of my neighbors are of European descent. Bro, they say they feel like an outcast when they go to the city, bro. They're packing. Like, you're a target. If you're of European descent and you go to the city, you're a target, bro. And I'm just like, wow, like it's 2021. We're in the US and we're speaking on this, bro. Like, that is just amazing to me, dude. So, I mean, honestly, man, go ahead. You're fine.
Politicians that speak to that rhetoric, you can't tell me you're oppressed when you have multi-million-dollar homes. You can't tell me you're oppressed when you're the first active person to make $1 billion. That's just not the countries that when you speak out against the government, you get snatched up in the middle of the night. And people say, "Oh, we're close to that here." Maybe we are, maybe we're not. I don't think we are. I think we're in a place now where on social media platforms you can't say certain things because you may get doxxed, you may get shut down, and it certainly can be viewed as censorship. And we talked about this as social media platforms, like, oh, they're private companies, they have the clause 320 that allows them not to be liable and be able to pull things, and they're not adherent to the Constitution. And then that the former president has a lawsuit against them saying they're colluding with government, which you heard Biden's press secretary basically say, we are talking and we're giving them recommendations on what to pull off social media. So that inherently is the government identifying things, and that could be litigated. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not that smart. We still have the First Amendment to speak publicly what we want to speak about, right? Like if I go to Denny's, I could say whatever I want. If I go to the Walmart or Dollar Tree or whatever, I could say what I want to anybody. You're accountable how people react in terms of how it could affect you. That's adult rules, right? But I also feel that social media platforms at this point now, the way they're utilized in our country, I think we couldn't account for this, and it's going to sound like kind of asymmetrical, but it's almost like a municipality service at this point. Like, you get up in the morning, there's a couple things that have to happen for you to be able to be functional in a home in America. You have to have paid your light bill, so you could have AC or heat and lights. You have to have paid your water bill, so you could take a shower, brush your teeth, and flush the toilet. And you have to have internet connectivity, so you can watch your television, get online, run your social media, your phone, all that. And then, where do the majority of Americans get their information and their news? People aren't watching regular television anymore. People don't sit down. Like our era of saying, oh, I like the show SEAL Team on CBS. Now I got to wait for every Wednesday or Thursday for that show to come up. Now that, but they're losing money at the seams. That's why they have to be so controversial. The real hustle is load a whole season onto Netflix or Hulu, and you can binge watch everything and have access to everything. Where do people, if you go, hey, I just bought this new drill, where do you go to look up how to use it? You go to YouTube. Yes. If you go, hey, I'm in the business of buying a new hoster for my whatever, you go to YouTube. If you go, oh, my kids want a loft bed, where do I research that? You go onto social media sites or you Google it, then it shows up on your feed. Social media platforms now are as equally influential and as utilized as daily municipalities. They are.
Yes.
So if you were to remove somebody off of social media, i.e. the president, i.e. you, i.e. Ben Shapiro, i.e. whoever it is, Farrakhan, whoever the case may be, if I'm running for public office and I don't have the ability to be on any social media platforms, I'm severely disadvantaged. Disadvantaged. And my fundraising is disadvantaged. My ability to buy ad time on network television is severely impacted. So I think there needs to be a dialogue that these social media platforms either A, need to be broken up, or B, they need to be categorized as municipality services because they're used that way. And when they want to proliferate the COVID vaccine, where do they go to? If they're out here validating messages are accurate or not accurate on Facebook or Instagram, then that tells you that's a municipality service, right? Like, yes. It's no different than going to the light company and going, hey, my light bill was $8,000. You overcharged me. They'll come back and say, that's actually flagged. We have a copy of your bill. We didn't charge you $8,000. So which facts are you checking? Right? We know what they're checking, right? Because it's
Right.
advantageous. And guess what? If people can villainize the Democrats all they want, and some of it's requisite, needed, and some of it's not. But I tell you this: if a bunch of conservative quasi Republicans bought Twitter, and this was being weaponized by Republicans or conservatives against Democrats, they would have no problem with it either.
Correct.
Ideologues, they're only ideologues when they're disadvantaged.
100%.
They're not ideologues when they have the upper hand, right?
They don't have to be.
Remember, they didn't trust the vaccine. You're right, because they didn't trust the vaccine. Harris said that she wouldn't get the vaccine because she don't trust Trump's vaccine. All these vaccines were created under Trump's watch.
Yes.
So trust it or you don't trust it. So then all the Republicans that said, well, I like Trump, so I'll get the vaccine, but now they don't want the vaccine because Biden's president. You're fake news as well. I want to ride with the person that has a legitimate reason to want to be vaccinated or not. And if you don't want to be, I'm okay with that. And for you to go, well, you're putting other people at risk. Well, those other people should be vaccinated then, if that's what their concern is. I don't think unvaccinated people should be concerned with the health of other unvaccinated people.
Yes.
Man, for your fork.
Oh my goodness, man. It's like, it's crazy because as you could see what was going on recently with Rand Paul and Fauci, with the argument. I mean, they've been going at it since the beginning, since this thing broke out. They've been going at it for a minute. And what's clear is that we know that the Chinese Communist Party created it, but certain elites, certain medical elites were able to, here in America, were able to finagle into the government to help subsidize what goes on at the Wuhan lab. So, and now it's like, China's like, nah, we didn't create it. And obviously people like Dr. Fauci, who denied subsidizing it, but he actually did, are obviously denying it as well. So we have a bunch of, in particular our country, nobody wants to take responsibility, bro. If anything, at the very least, they'll put it on Trump for whatever reason. And it's just, you can't really run a nation like that, bro, without recognizing the mistakes you made, admitting the mistakes you made, and doing and moving forward to be a better nation. I mean, we do this every day in our lives, bro. Like, I've made mistakes in my life. You made mistakes. You're like, I gotta evolve here, or I'm not gonna work. It's not gonna work out for me. We can't do that as a nation, bro. We just cannot do that as a nation. And I don't know when this is gonna take place, man. I don't know if we're ever gonna be able to get to this, because the truth of the fact is that the country really is. I don't want to say it's torn, but bro, half the country, almost like half the country in a sense, is like what you would call conservative. And the other half is like, what you would call in a sense liberal. So where can we come to common ground on, bro? We can't even come to common ground on immigration policies. We just cannot. Like, what is it? So really what has to take place, is the states. The state, that's where the real power is at, bro, is the states mandating things and changing things from within. Because Biden has so much power, he has a lot of power, but obviously DeSantis, and then you got Governor Abbott, they are really holding the line regarding their value system. And that's how it needs to take place. It's the states, dude. That's how it's going to take place in regards to that. So it's just, it's interesting because when you talked about California and you were talking about, hey, California is going to play you're welcome here. Well, why is California doing that? Well, California is doing that because obviously they're a sanctuary state. They have a huge deficit, a state deficit, even though Pelosi was able to bail them out recently with the COVID stipend that Biden passed a couple of months ago, because they're about 30 years behind on their state pensions, which amounts to I think it was like $3 billion, bro, that they're behind on. But Biden helped them out with that. But the reason why California needs that, bro, is based off obviously their state pensions. They need as many people in the state to pay into their system. Like, hey, that's where they give people driver's license. That, hey, you just showed up yesterday. Here's a driver's license, bro. Hopefully you get a job and put into the system. That's just how the state of California runs, man. They need to pay off their, pay into the system. So everyone just has their own ways of doing business. The truth of the fact is that when California is rolling, though, it's a powerhouse, bro. It is a powerhouse when it comes to the economy. I think, but prior to COVID, it was like the fourth most powerful economy in the world, bro. In the world. Go ahead.
Hey, the evidence is it's primarily run by immigrants, so that there's the proof and the value, right?
Yes,
but
yes.
what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? We know as believers that it was the chicken, not the egg. They'll tell you that it was the egg because they created that. So I think that we also look like, I don't know if anyone's looking at this strategically, but in my view, what I'm looking at is, we had Eisenhower in the 50s caution us to the military-industrial complex, right? And we see that now warfare has changed. How we wage warfare, the cyber element, it's expensive. Well, when you're looking at the capabilities and the end strength, we're not going to probably see a large growth to that. There's probably not an appetite on either side for the growth of the manpower. There's a growth from capability and technology. But I think the new way ahead, and we're going to use the immigration issue, we're going to use COVID, is the health industrial complex is going to be as equally formidable as the military industrial complex, because right now you have COVID-19. Well, then we have the Delta variant, and then we have the Delta variant one night stand strain that shows up in 6 months.
21.
Right. Yeah, we have all these things, right? Then there's the whole, well, we're going to need a booster for the COVID, right? And then we want to make it mandatory. And I think they need to do a couple things. They need to probably get this thing certified and approved through the FDA for multiple reasons. There's just people that are probably apolitical, and the majority of Americans are apolitical, right? The only ones that are political are the ones that are being paid for it to do that, right? Or they have impact to that. Most people are apolitical, especially with COVID. The media has made you pick a side based on your politics, or they've alluded to that, right? Like, if you're not woke, you don't have a vaccine, et cetera. But we know that's not true for most Americans. Some Americans are just very leery of getting something that's in a emergency use phase, right? Now, and when you look at the survivability rate, and then you looked at the first run of COVID, we knew that there was 2 comorbidities for fatalities. So now we know now, 18 months later, it's like 4.7 comorbidity factors for every death. So that means, you're either a food bomb, you're hypertensive, you're diabetic, you have a compromised immune system, you're a smoker, you're a heavy drinker, you recently fought cancer and we're going through chemotherapy. Whatever it is, some of it's self-induced, some of it's not. I'm not here to argue those points. What I'm here to tell you is that there's so many comorbidities that go into having bad outcomes. So I think once you get FDA approval, I think for a lot of people and for parents of kids, I think you may see a different posture on that, because there's a reason you don't see any COVID vaccine commercials. Why? Because they can only be on TV if they're FDA approved. And once they're FDA approved, you have to publicly disclose all their side effects. Now, I'm not this conspiracy theorist thinking that there's all these bad outcomes. There's bad outcomes every year from Motrin, from Tylenol, from particular antibiotics, from other painkillers. There's bad outcomes. So I know that if I watch particular news outlets, they're just going to highlight the bad outcomes, and they may not have some context. And then I know if I watch other outlets, they're going to just highlight all the great things. And it's weird that if the hesitancy is among Republican states and Trump supporters, I find it weird that a bunch of Democrats care about what happens to them. That's bizarre to me. Like, if the line's been drawn, what do you care?
Right. Less vote. Less people on the voter polls. The rolls.
Why do you care? Do you really care? Like, or you just want them to do something they don't want to do, right? And that has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat. That just happens to be people in power, right? People on the left say we need to control guns, we need to control, because they want power. They don't want that. And the people on the right, these guys post on Instagram, they have 200 guns. They're telling people that don't have guns something. I'm doing this, and there's nothing you can do about it. And then the other side is like, well, I want to do something, so you can't do that. And it doesn't matter what the issue is. If it's a wedge issue, I could find the Republicans doing it to the left, and I could find the Democrats doing it to the right. So it's interesting that the majority of the alleged vaccine hesitancy are because they're Trump supporters. And if all the Biden supporters are vaccinated, then you should be good, based on your own argument.
Yes.
So what's the issue? True. What's the issue? Like Chicago, I would love for them to fix all that, all the crime, all the gangs, all the fatherless homes, all the government assistance. East LA, I would love for them to fix all the gang issues. Guess what? I don't live there. So if you defund the police in East LA, I'm there this much of my life. I don't have a vested interest to go fix that. So if nobody that's getting the vaccine is voting on your side, what do you care? If you're vaccinated, you should be good based on your own knowledge, based on your own theory. I mean, I'm just bringing it up for a discussion point, because I think that's probably your response. And then I think at that point, we'll probably close out for this topic, and then we'll close out, and then we'll figure something out for the next one. So what are your thoughts on that, on those conversation points?
I honestly, man, I think it should be, it's up to the American and their doctor. But obviously we know states are going full-fledged. California is one of them, and some other counties. I think it's the capital, Sacramento, is saying in order for you to work in establishments, you have to show some type of vaccination card. I mean, they're already, they're going how they're going, man. And really, it's really, I think it personally, in my belief, I think it should be up to you. I think it should be up to the individual. And if you want to keep that private, that's money. That's your right to keep that private. What we do know is that with the vaccinations, whether you have 1, 2, 3, the booster, whatever the case may be, but by this time next year, you'll have to have 6 shots to be up to date. What we do know is that whether you have it or not, whether you have it, you could still get COVID. You can actually still die from COVID, right? And actually, as we know it today, the vaccination can kill you itself. It has already. So it's just really, I mean, my personal preference is my personal preference. I won't speak on it here, because that's my right as an American. But I truly believe that it should be your choice, man. What I would say is, seeing how Americans are, I want to say about 80% of Americans are considered obese. 80% of Americans are considered obese. And what we do know is if you are grossly overweight, you are, the COVID is foaming at the mouth, bro. Like, oh my goodness, just ready to take you, bro. But that's not being talked about. That's like, bro, if you're fat, overweight, you're an avid smoker, that's not being talked about, bro. That's not, get the vaccine. That's the easiest fix. The VA does it all the time. Like, oh, you have the ever herniated disc, go get surgery. I'm like, nah, bro, I'm gonna fix this on my own. I can do it. I believe I can do it. So we push these things on citizens, and really Americans need to pay attention. We need to pay attention, man. And I had a cousin that lost his life from COVID. He lost his life, man, and it was a sad moment for my family. Yet he had preconditions, bro. He was pretty big for his age, and he was an avid smoker. And he, according to family members, he said if he ever got COVID, it would cash him out. So he knew, brother. He knew, But we're not pushing that. We're not pushing how we need to cut our diets, how we need to change our habits of whatever the case may be, smoking, But that's not being pushed, bro. It's this vaccination thing, and I'm O positive, bro. I heard that has some type of Kryptonian to the COVID. And I'm not an avid smoker, and I'm not obese. I'm a vegetarian. So that's pretty much, you kind of know where I'm at with that. I'm going to take my chances. With it, man.
And now I don't disclose myself, just like I wouldn't go ask somebody what their cholesterol level is that look fat to me at Walmart, just because it's a HIPAA violation, right? But right. I mean, and for the record, between you and I, we have, a lot of years of military service. So we are truly not anti-vax people at all. I've gotten more vaccines than the average civilian, and not only have I gotten them, I was the proliferator of said vaccines to all my Marines, all my sailors. So I've given thousands of vaccines throughout my career. So I'm not an anti-vaxxer by any stretch. I understand science, but we're not picking science now. We're just picking opinions because they align with talking points. And as you and I are the true lovers of America, we want you to make an opinion for yourself. I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm just going to tell you, why don't you think instead of just following. Be the sheep. Hey, with that, brother, we close out for the weekend, man. I bid you and the tribe a great weekend with family and friends, and then we will be back up on the end game again next week. I think this is a great model for us. It's a great time that we're able to cut away from the family and have a great conversation and have it public for everyone to kind of chime in on, and at the same time be able to enjoy the fruits of our labor. With that, any closing remarks, bro?
No, I'm good, brother. I'm gonna wish you a great weekend in return, man. Enjoy your weekend in that heat, brother. I gotta pass on that heat, bro. I gotta pass.
Have a great weekend, man. Talk to you soon.
You too, brother. Out.
All right, bye-bye.